Welcome everybody to the Microsoft Excel MO-200 exam prep series. My name is Chintan Patel. I'm a Microsoft Office 365 2019 Specialist Master Instructor from Benoni, South Africa. And we continue with our videos and training on the MO-200 exam. Apologies for skipping last week. I had some matters out of my control, which did not allow me to continue with my presentation. But everything's back to normal, so we shall continue with this prep series. We should be able to complete this in the next week, latest by the following week's end of July. And then I will talk about what we will be doing next. What we are going to see today, we're going to continue with our set of objectives. Just to move on over here, we have my social media channels. This is how you can get hold of me. I post things on LinkedIn and Instagram, Twitter, quite a bit regarding Microsoft Office, Microsoft in general, what's the latest that's coming out. There's a couple of engagements I'll be attending in this week and next week, just to find out what's happening. And I do wish to share this in my next video, or it might be a new video that could be posted. So I am looking forward to it. It's actually some new things coming out in Excel, or it has been released. So I do wish to share that as well with the rest of the world. And all of these recordings do get put up on my YouTube channel. I try to put it as soon as I can, and there's my link for my YouTube channel. Right, and these are the certifications we are working towards. So the 2019 365 certifications are the ones we should be aiming for. The Microsoft Office Specialist Excel certification at the top. I will be doing the Office Specialist Expert series as well directly after this. And that format might change slightly. It might not take place over multiple weeks. It could be a one full day course. It could be 2 days that we may spend on this. But I will release more details on that as we come closer to that certification. Just this week, or in actually the last 2-3 weeks, I've been seeing a lot of people doing a lot of Microsoft Office Specialist exams, especially in the African continent. It's very exciting that people are actually pursuing these certifications. I do have colleagues in my trainer network who are also Microsoft Office Specialist advocates, and they've been promoting this quite a lot. So I've been seeing a lot of activity towards the northern side of Africa, East Africa, and it's really, really great to see that it's actually pushing forward. And lastly, just to end this slide, we are using Microsoft Teams. Just familiarize yourself with the environment. Ask a question in the chat. You can speak up with the microphone turned on, or you can raise your hand and I'll attend to it. But you're welcome to speak up at any time. All right, so what were we covering last time? I'll just end this quickly. And I'll just switch to the correct screen. So we can open up with our exercise files, manage data cells and ranges subfolder. Contoso inventory is the file we're working with. However, what I have done last night, I did make some slight changes in the exercise files. So you may want to get the latest exercise files. I'll put the link inside the chat area. That's where you can very quickly get the latest exercise files. I have made 1 or 2 changes. There's some additions I put in just so that we can cover some of the work today. Otherwise, you can just follow me along just by watching me, and then you can look at the video in your own time and do the exercises as well. And again, my YouTube channel, I'll put it up into the chat area, so then we can have a look at the videos afterwards. All right, remember to subscribe to my channel. This will then notify you as soon as I put up a brand new video. Right, so I'm going to open up my presentation. I'm going to share my screen in a minute. So let me do that there. Right, so my Excel screen has been shared, and we have the Contosa inventory exercise in front of us with the workbook. And what did I cover in the last video? I'll just very briefly talk about it. I won't go into too much depth, but we covered workbook properties. It was a follow-up from the lesson before that we were able to add workbook properties to our files. Workbook properties help us to organize our worksheets better in the form of, indexing our files on our computer inside some sort of file repository that we may have online or on the computer itself. So if we populate our properties quite often, then it just makes it easier to organize the files better. Whenever we want to search for them, whenever we want to find them, it gives additional information about the file. So we have what is called metadata. So metadata is information about our documents. Right? So that could be the author, that could be any keywords. So how do we actually navigate? We've got file, info tab. On the right-hand side, I have the properties drop down. I go to advanced properties, and I have this properties window showing up where I can edit fields such as the title, the subject, the author, manager, company, category, keywords, and comments. Right, and this is an activity we should be doing quite frequently, something we should be doing at the end of completing our work. Right, then we have an idea what sort of information I can use to populate these fields. When I'm done, I just push OK. I just click the Save button, and I have my properties saved. And then these properties stay in the file. When you forward them in an email, when you upload them, make a PDF, they all stay inside the document. We briefly looked at in the last video the show and hide function. The show and hide function is in the formulas tab. In the formula auditing group, I have a command at the top right-hand corner called show formulas. What this allowed me to do was to see what is behind any cell which has a particular formula. Right, so it is considered a view. Right, so we have a very specific view of our data. When I switch on show formulas, I can only see the formulas on my worksheet. So if a cell has a formula of some kind, then I can see all the formulas in just one particular view. It makes it really great to identify how formulas work. And if I'm troubleshooting, I want to find out what is the problem in a certain calculation, this view might be able to identify that. First, it color codes my cells, which are the input cells. So it'll show me very clearly with color with what is being selected. And show formulas is a view that you want to switch off when you're done with it. Right? We don't want to stay inside this view because we do not see the end results. We just see formulas. All right, so let's show formulas. We also looked at the keyboard shortcut control and the left apostrophe. Right, the left apostrophe is at the top left-hand corner of your keyboard next to the number 1 in the number row. Right, so control and that left apostrophe can switch it on and can switch it off. We looked at the inspect document feature. Right, so inspect workbook, inspect document, checking for issues. That's in the file tab, info tab on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side pane, we have check for issues, and we had 3 commands under this drop-down. We had check the workbook for accessibility, check for compatibility, and even just a general inspect document. And the inspect document allowed us to find any information that we would like to remove before we actually go and distribute it. So we use this document inspector for for the purpose of distributing of a workbook or a worksheet. Some things shouldn't be going along with our document or the workbook, so we may want to remove it. This is a bulk tool that I could use, a bulk step I could take, remove everything in one go without trying to find out what should be removed. Excel does a very good job. Same with Word, same with PowerPoint. That will tell you, it will actually inform you that you may want to remove all of this in the event you want to distribute it. You want to make sure that people don't have issues opening certain things on certain computers with compatibility. So inspect workbook or worksheet allows you to select certain elements and just remove them all in one go. Right, so maybe there's something I just thought of right now, that if you have hidden worksheets, maybe you didn't realize that before distributing you had something hidden inside here, a worksheet that you know that is hidden, but when it comes to distribution you may forget that you had a worksheet inside and it should have been deleted. Right, so the inspector, when you inspect your entire workbook, it will find all these elements and it will inform you that this has been found. Once it has found it, we just select it, push remove, and that particular element has been removed. Just one step we have to be careful of is that you cannot undo the step. Right? Once a document inspector is run, then we cannot go back. So please make sure that you have some sort of backup of the work that you're busy with in the event you accidentally remove something from here.
Sorry, Chintan, just to clarify, so basically when we go to that section and we just say if I've got hidden sections and I remove that, that affects my entire document. So ideally, you're saying I should have a copy of the document.
You should have a copy. Yes, if you think it does not need to be removed, or you do want to have for your internal working purposes, you want to make sure that those elements are visible, then yes, I do suggest you have a backup. This is purely or mainly really used for distribution purposes. Right? So don't try to work off the same version and then you realize that, okay, well, I've distributed it, but now I would like my the work that I've been doing, the internal workings that I've been doing back, and it's not going to come back if you try to undo something.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Great stuff. Right, so this is a tool I've seen mostly used in Excel, a lot in PowerPoint, when people are distributing slides. When a presentation is done, certain information should be removed. That's when I've seen it used quite a bit. In Excel, it's also very much used when people want to remove your certain formulas or certain aspects. Hidden names is one over here. So your long external references that maybe you are referencing another worksheet or another workbook, and you want to remove those references so people don't figure out the details about another person's computer, because if it has a file path means that it's directing to somebody's computer, somebody's documents folder, somebody's other subfolders, and we don't want people to be seeing that entire file path, so we may want to remove that. With worksheets is the one I told you about. Hidden rows and columns is another one. We may have hidden something temporarily, right? And so we could get rid of that as well. We may see some of these in our next series of videos as we cover them. So your pivot tables, your macros, your links to other files. If we look at the scenario manager, that might be something I want to get rid of, but that comes in all later videos. In the other Excel series or exam prep series, or in other Excel videos that I cover, it might be present. Right. So just remember that if for distribution, it says it actually gives you a little hint here. Before publishing this file, be aware that it contains. And so these are some of the things you may want to remove before publishing. Just make sure you have a backup copy because the undo button is not available. In that drop down of the check for issues, we had check accessibility. And check accessibility allowed this particular worksheet to be distributed, ensuring that it is easy for people with a disability to read the worksheet, just like how another abled person could do so. So gives you some hints on the side here, and actually we should be following them. They are hints, they are recommendations, but we do want to actually do this, right? It's not something that has been that is mandatory to do. It should be, but we don't know who our audience will be, right? Maybe we do have an audience who do have some sort of disability. I want to make sure I have inclusive content. I want to make sure people understand what they are reading. So we want to follow the advice of the accessibility checker by filling in alternative text where necessary. So alternative text allows you to put in certain text behind an image, because when an image, a video, a chart, a table, because when the screen reader is actually reading out information to this person with a disability, the screen reader should actually know what to read out for the person. Right? The screen reader doesn't know what the picture is about. It's not that smart as yet, right? So we would like to inform the reader that what is this picture all about. So we want to put a few sentences, maybe in just 1 or 2 words, just identifying what these objects are all about. And it moves on to giving you certain warnings of merged cells or hard to read text contrast. Right? So just telling you to fix certain color issues, try to fix certain formatting issues. It may be difficult for certain applications like screen readers to read if it is not formatted correctly. Right? So gives you all the advice at the bottom over here, how to do it, all the steps to do it. So it's not really difficult at all to figure out what has to happen. We may just need to think a little bit extra on the type of sentences, type of words to use when filling out alternative text. In that same drop-down, we were also looking at your check compatibility, which just means that if we are opening up an older version of an Excel file in a newer version, or we opening up a newer version of an Excel file in an older version, we want to run the check compatibility tool to find out what will Excel be able to open and what it might not be able to open. Right? So this prevents you from finding it out in the way where Excel may crash, or you may lose some data, or something doesn't appear correctly. You're going to just run this compatibility checker before trying to open up an older version of a file in this current version, right? So, and then we know how we actually should be dealing with some of the elements, some rows, some columns, some formatting. This drop down shows you the different Excel versions available and the features that used to exist that no longer exist in the current version, or something in the new version that didn't exist in a previous version. So maybe somebody gave you a file that has been used or created in Excel 2019. You only have Excel 2013 or 2016. You want to run the compatibility checker with this file and just identify what will work and what won't work. Right? We don't want to be going through a whole lot of calculations and data entry and then figuring out later that this won't work because it was created with something that maybe didn't exist before, right? And then we have to now do everything again. The compatibility checker will allow you to identify these issues beforehand, and then we can start off working very much correctly. Right, so some very interesting tools available in this info tab, this check for issues drop down, things we should be using on a more regular basis. As we work with different types of files, we are presenting to different types of audiences. We want to distribute this file very carefully. We have the tools that allow us to do some background checking before before any of these are implemented. Then we looked at exporting files in different formats. So this export tab on the left-hand side in the file tab here allows us to just save a file as PDF. You can change the file type as well. to an older file version, macro-enabled workbook. It can also be converting it to text, a comma-separated value file or text file as well. So different formats available. Yes.
What is macro-enabled?
So a macro, that's fine, no problem. It is not a problem. So macros are covered in the next exam series, but what a macro does, it's an automatic way to do a series of tasks within an Excel spreadsheet. And let me give you an example. Let's say you are creating some sort of spreadsheet. It can be a report. It can be just any type of worksheet. And you know that it takes you a certain amount of time to create this very same worksheet every single week or every single day, can even be monthly. You know that you are getting new data every time, but the methods or the steps that you take to create this worksheet are exactly the same every time. So it's the same report that you're creating, whether it's a monthly report or weekly report, and you know that data is coming, different data is coming in, but the clicks that you make, the menu tab drop downs that you choose, the right clicks that you go through, the formulas that you put in are all exactly the same every time you create this report. And it takes you really long to do this very same report. Maybe it takes you an hour of your time every single day, and you want to try and reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to do this report. We want to try and to get other things done, and I want to find faster ways, shortcuts, really want to speed up because this report is really taking very long. And that's where macro comes into the picture, where it is an automated program that you can set up as the user, which will make use of the computing processing power of Excel and the computer to speed up those very same actions that you use when creating the report. So a report may take you 1 hour of your time. When you use a macro and you tell Excel to record the steps that you are going through and then playing it back or replaying it back with your steps and with some new data, you will find that something that used to take 1 hour will be done under 10 seconds. Right? So it is a much faster way of doing all the work that you normally do on a day-to-day basis. Same processes, same steps, same clicks, same buttons that you press, but what's changing, the data that you're getting in is different. It may be now you were working with June data, now you're working with July data. You're working with 2018 data, now you're working with 2019 data. And it's just taking you so long to do something. You want to find faster ways. The keyboard shortcuts are there, but it's still taking you the same amount of time, same amount of typing, and then the macro can actually get that done faster. Right? So macros are in the next course. It is something that's taught quite often, right? But there are some disadvantages to macros. Macros can be dangerous as well. And there's also some frustrating elements of the macro. One of the common things is you can't undo a macro if you make a mistake. It's time consuming to do it all over again. Right, so I'll cover more of that in the next topic. I don't want to go into that. Okay. It takes quite a while to actually do. When I normally teach the course and I do macros, I take at least 2 hours to cover macros because it's really complicated. And actually, it even exists on a course on its own. When you take macros a step further, we learn Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. In my introductory slide, I said I teach Excel VBA as well, and that is everything to do with how do we program with Excel, because Excel has its own programming language called VBA, and that's a 1 or 2 day course on its own because it gets really, really deep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Right. So don't worry about it now. In the exam, if it asks you save the file as a macro enabled file, you would just go File, Export, choose macro enabled. It's a different format. Instead of an Excel standard Excel SX or Excel workbook extension, it's an Excel SM or macro enabled. Right. So Just you just wouldn't have to know that for that particular exam. You won't be required in this exam to create a macro. It is not in the set of objectives. So it can be file export, it can be file save as. You can go and browse, and in this drop down where we have save as type, we also have the different formats available. Right, so there's two ways to do an export, right? But when we normally use a term export, the exam is expecting you to know that you can go to the export tab instead of doing a file save as. Even though file save as is correct, when the question tells you export the document or export the worksheet or workbook as something, you may want to use the export tab. It is more correct because they're giving you a clue when in the wording to when they tell you when they tell you to do export, use the export tab, right? It just that's how straightforward it is, and so it's testing you that you know that you can put your workbook in a different format to the one that you're currently using, using this functionality available over here, whether it's a PDF, whether it's something else over here. All right, and then we started off a new section regarding the paste special. So different ways of pasting your data in once copied. So I looked at paste special and autofill, where we have a known pattern, right? So this is something we use on a regular basis. We are putting dates, days of the week, months of the year, years, and I do one or two examples, and then I go to the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, the green square, and I see the thin black cross, and I click and drag down. I have a pattern being repeated, right? So this is a known pattern for Excel. Excel knows that it has to actually repeat this pattern. We don't have to give it any form of tips or any sort of assistance with that, right? And we can click and drag down and we create some sort of pattern. When we have autofill completed, I have this additional contextual menu appearing when an autofill is done, where I can choose different options for autofill. Do I want to copy the cells? Do I want to fill the series? Fill the series, filling in the pattern, fill with formatting, fill without formatting. And if you have date and time data, you have additional types of fill available. Do you only want to fill days of the week? Do you want to fill months of the year? Do you want to fill the years only? And we're actually going to cover flash fill very briefly. In the previous video, I just talked about it. I think it's a good idea I cover it, right? Because it may also save you time. It's a great time-saving technique to repeat a pattern that you create yourself, right? And so I will talk about that. I have a special exercise that I created. It's in the exercise files in the link that I shared. It is a file called Contoso Address Book, and we're going to open that in a moment to see what flash fill is all about. Right, so filling in dates. We also normally do that when we have formulas. I complete one cell with a formula. I double click the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, and it automatically completes the rest of the cells for me when I complete when I want to complete the series over here. Right, so we also, that was paste special with calculations. Paste special with calculations, actually what we covered was when we have, say, values going down, I want to multiply these values with another number without inserting an additional column, without doing a formal calculation. I want to use a copy paste function. So I went to copy a certain cell, and I want to paste it over some existing cells, and I want some sort of calculation to happen over the numbers that we have selected. So I went to the paste drop down, I went to the paste special command, and in this paste special dialog box here, I could choose an operation to carry out. So what would happen here is that I've selected the number 17 inside cell J8, and when I've copied it and I paste it over certain other numbers, I can tell Excel to take the existing numbers, multiply it by 17, and replace the very same cells with the new data. I could do an addition, I could do a division, I could do subtraction as well, which saves me a lot of time instead of inserting a new column, doing a calculation, copying and pasting the data into the new location, deleting the old cells and the old columns and rows. Right, so it's a great time-saving technique, great way to paste data inside. Right, then we also looked very briefly at pasting values only. So we have two columns here, column K and column M. Both show the same results. However, column K has a formula inside. Column M does not have the formula inside. Right, so I first did a calculation in column K. I then just went through a standard copy, and when I go to the paste options, I right-click paste, or if I just go to the drop-down and find which paste option am I going to choose, I'm choosing paste values and values only, right? And what does that do? It removes all your formulas, right? So it just completely removes any form of formulas that we had over here. And why should I use something like this? Why is this actually very important, this paste values? Well, if you want to distribute a workbook and you don't want anybody to see the formulas you have used, then you may want to take the extra step of copying and pasting your data into another column, and that removes all the formulas, provided you choose paste values only. Right. The answers are there. Maybe it's important for people just to see the answers. They don't need to see how it gets worked out because you're distributing this. Maybe the formulas allow you to, have a competitive edge. You have very fancy formulas that you're working with, and you don't want people to be seeing the formulas that have been used. The paste values can actually get rid of the formulas and keep the answers there. It also, when we come to doing certain types of formatting, formulas may come in the way. Certain calculations, formulas may come in the way. I do cover very specific formatting issues when we look at the next MO-200 series of videos, where we take a look deeper, where formatting could come in the way when we are doing certain types of formatting. Right, but so that's where there's a couple of reasons where you may want to use paste values only instead of keeping the data as it is, because people can see the formula and maybe you don't want them to see the formula. We can get rid of that straight away. For the purposes of the exam, you should know how to do that, where they'll ask you to copy certain data and they'll tell you to paste the data as values only. Right, so then you will see, you go to the paste drop down and you have a couple of options here, right? There's one that says values and number formatting, values and source formatting. We have values only as the one we have to select. And we ended off by looking at inserting and deleting rows and columns. And I was looking in the monthly data worksheet, right? So I inserted a new column called total. I inserted a new row called South Africa. I could right click on a certain cell, or rather a row, or rather a column, and choose the insert option. It would insert a column before another column, a reference column. So if I want a column after December, I should rather right click on total and choose insert, and it will insert a column before the column I have currently selected. If I want to insert a row, I right click on the row, it will insert a row above the column above the row that I have selected. And in the home tab cells group, I have the ability to insert sheet rows. I can also delete sheet rows, delete columns. Right, so if you select a row, you can only delete a row. You can't delete a column. When you select a column, you can delete the column, but you can't delete the row. Right, so we just should be familiar with these drop downs when in the exam they ask you to do something, insert a row, insert a column, you can right-click the headers of the rows and columns and do the insert and deletion as well. So we are going to look at the Contoso address book very briefly, just to cover flash fill. Right, so in the chat area, I posted the link to the exercise file in the Manage Data Cells and Ranges subfolder in the Contoso address book file, which is the file I'll open up over here. I'm going to cover briefly what flash fill is all about. It is another way of copying and pasting data according to a certain pattern. Right, so I'm just going to put a very brief note over here what it's all about. So we saw autofill was a way of copying and pasting data with a known pattern. Right, so duplicate happened, dates were being copied all the way down, but the pattern was followed. We have flash fill now that comes into the picture, copying and pasting data with an unknown pattern. Right, so to whom is it unknown? It is for Excel. So Excel has no idea how this pattern works. And so what we are going to do, we are going to teach Excel how the pattern works, giving examples. Right, and once it has learned the pattern through one or two examples, it will use the power of autofill to complete the pattern for us. Right, so it is a series of steps we're going to take. Right, so no formulas. There is not one single formula being used over here. There's no formatting. Right, so there's no change in design. This is just simple typing. Right, simple typing, especially, and I'm going to put it in capital letters here, error-free typing. And that means no mistakes allowed. Why is that? Because Excel is then going to be like a baby over here. It's going to learn from your steps. It's going to learn from your mistakes. If you make a mistake, it will repeat the mistake. If you do something correctly, it will learn it in that specific way. Right, so no mistakes allowed. If you do make a mistake, you can't backspace. Right, there are maybe certain instances where backspace may work. In my opinion, with all the examples I've done with all my classes, I try to avoid doing a backspace whilst I'm doing a flash fill. I try to avoid any sort of mistake, and we then are presented with something which is incorrect, and we have to start over. Right, so this is just pure typing. Excel is going to learn from our typing. And so what is an example of flash fill? I want to create a worksheet where I have people's email addresses. Right, so this email address has to be created using the following format. So I have a column of full name. I separated it by first name and last name. Right, in the first video that I created, I talked about how do we separate files. Right, we talked about comma separating values. We talked about text to columns. Right, so have a look at that video again, where I showed you how to separate a full name into first name and last name. Right, and then from that, I want to create an email address. So my email address format should be first name with a dot, then last name at the company's name. So I'm going to say contoso.com. All right, so first name dot last name at contoso.com. So Excel must automatically pick up the first name. It must put the dot for me, must pick up the last name and put at contoso.com, the suffix at the end, the domain at the end, and it must do that for all of the names going down. Right, so no mistakes allowed. and it is just pure typing. So if I do this first example here, I have to make sure uppercase E, right, RIC, dot TORRES at contoso.com. And I push enter. I shouldn't click down, right? If you try to click going down, it's not going to work. You have to push enter. So then it gets activated. It's the Excel starts understanding what we're trying to do. Let's look at the next one. I push capital letter B. Right. So on my worksheet, you should see that it's picking up some sort of pattern. It's putting the first name dot last name at, and then now instead of Contoso, the next one says Condiso, and then it says Conriso, Composo, Contuso. So I have no idea what the pattern is here. It's picking up something with a series of alphabet letters. However, this is still incorrect. So I don't want to push any button to complete the list. I should rather just carry on with the typing at contoso.com, forcing Excel to understand that it must only take first name dot last name at contoso.com. Right, it has to do that. Push enter. Right, now if I try the next one, A. Right, so A for Alexandros. So then as soon as I inspect that pattern, it's a good idea to double check. I can see alexandros.brixtians at contoso.com, then Rutten.porter at contoso.com. Right, so it is now following the pattern correctly. From here, what do? I just push enter, right, and the pattern gets completed for me automatically. And that saves a lot of time. I really don't have to do formula work. I am going to cover formulas on how to do this using a formula, and that should be in the next lesson or the following lesson, because it's something that we may want to know for the exam. It is also, I think, briefly mentioned in the next exam. Right, I'll just double check that. But we can do this with a formula, but if we wanted to just use the power of flash fill, we just learn, we take the pattern, we have to then teach Excel, which will learn the pattern. Maybe not one example, maybe the second example, maybe the third example. All right, so we give an example, and then it learns the pattern. It verifies it with us by briefly showing it in that view, slightly grayed out view, just asking us, is that the correct way that you'd like to repeat the pattern? And yes, that is the correct way. We just push enter and it completes it for us. Right, so I just want to inform everybody that flash fill, right, so flash fill only works if you have Excel 2016 and higher. Right, does not work in 2013. If you do have Excel 2013, not going to work. I've taught Excel a lot of times. I've taught people using Excel 2013, 2010 does not work at all. It only works if you have 2016. Making sure that with 2016, excuse me, that you have the latest updates installed, right? And then you'll have flash fill capabilities available to you. Right, so that was just briefly flash fill. It's a pattern you create, right? So what I try to suggest to my students, keep your data as close as possible, right? So it can be anywhere in the worksheet, right? But just to make it easier for Excel to pick up the data it needs to use, try to keep it as close as you can, and it should pick it up. And what are other examples where you could use flash fill? You can use flash fills in your reference numbers. If you're trying to create a new reference number, employee ID or employee staff number, you want to create some alphanumeric combination of different letters, different numbers, a student number, a staff number. Flash fill is used for these purposes. All right, I've seen it in an academic environment as well. Works very well got to create a student number, create a staff number, a lot of alphanumeric combinations. It gets done in Excel, whether using formulas or not, or flash fill. And then once it's in Excel, it gets exported to the human resources system, and then all of the different student numbers and staff numbers get created. And that's how we have a readily available list. Right? So it's very, very ideal to use in those environments. I'm just going to save this. Right? So you're welcome to save it. You're welcome to discard it. You can watch the video again, and you'll be able to see then how I actually used flash fill for this purpose. I am looking at our next worksheet here called All Product Sales Transpose back in the Contosa inventory file, right? Excuse me. And we're looking at, just very briefly, another way of copying and pasting data. And in this copying and pasting methodology, we want to look at this term called transpose. Right? So what does transpose mean? Transpose means we switching the rows and columns. And so switch the rows and columns, or flip the rows and columns, if that's what you want to call it. Why do you want to do something like this? Well, if I give you the example of, I suppose we can work with this transpose worksheet. The real problem is when I am using Excel, I may have many columns. It may take up all 26 letters of the alphabet. It may take up a couple of more, but I have to frequently go sideways. I have to scroll left and right. I may also frequently scroll up and down quite a bit. And this is part of my daily activity. I have to keep on scrolling, go from one point to the other point every single time. So you're not comfortable working with multiple columns, right? And you want to rather make it that you, or see it in such a way that you can have multiple rows. Because what do we want to actually do, right? So I want to ensure that I'm able to scroll down with my mouse. Right? We have a very cool scrolling functionality on our mouse. We have a wheel available on our mouse. However, we can't scroll left and right with any physical button on our mouse. We have to click and drag the scroll bar every time I want to scroll. Right? So I want to have such data either going across or either going down. So it's a preference. Right? So maybe you want to work with columns going across, you want to work with rows going down. What I've mostly seen is that people have data going across, and they want it rather in rows going downwards because they know they can scroll very easily up and down instead of clicking and dragging this scroll bar here going left and right. So the transpose paste option allows you to copy the data. So it will create a duplicate, it will paste it, but it will switch the orientation of the rows and columns. So what used to exist as columns, so product key, product name, unit price, quantity sold, total sales, exists currently as column headers going across. It will now exist as row headers going down, and anything going down in rows will exist as columns going across. All right, so I'm just going to go through both methods where we're going to transpose our data going across, and then whatever data we have at the top here, that is a situation that I've seen mostly happen. I would like that to rather go downwards. We are going to put the data at the bottom on the right-hand corner. And the transpose paste option is available in your paste dropdown. You'll see in a moment how it looks like. So we are going to, first of all, select all this data. I'm in the All Product Sales Transpose worksheet. I am going to select all this data on the left-hand side. So I can select the headings, click and drag A9 to E9 on my keyboard, Control Shift down arrow once. Right, it's a keyboard shortcut I've been using quite some time to select all the data that I'd like to use without clicking and dragging. So it is a directional selection. hold on the Control button, hold on the Shift button, push the down arrow once, and it selects all your data. Control C to copy the data, or right-click copy, or click on the copy command at the top in the Home tab in the clipboard group. And then inside cell G8 on the right-hand side, I'm going to place my cursor in that cell. Now, I can choose to go to the Paste drop-down in the Home tab clipboard group, and I have the Paste category. In the Paste category, I have this last icon, which is an icon with a clipboard and with arrows going in opposite directions. That is your transpose. You can either choose that, or you can right-click on the cell and you go to Paste Special, or it may be available as a quick command, easily available here in this row, and that's the one you would pick. When you click Transpose, it will flip the data for you. Don't worry so much about the colors, all right? So it doesn't work very well with your colors, but the main idea is that now you have your data going in a different orientation. What used to be rows is now columns. Now whatever is columns is now rows. And then we can see that if we scroll all the way to the right, this is actually horrible, going into triple alphabet letters already. Right? And we really don't want to be working like that. It just takes too long to scroll left and right. So this is the situation. I've seen a lot of people in the situation. They have just so many columns to work with. They really cannot work in this view. They would rather want to work where I can scroll down easily, scroll up easily, without using the click and drag functionality too much to go sideways. So let's use this. Let's get to the ideal situation using this newly copied and pasted data. So now I would like to select everything from G8 all the way across, all the way down. I have no idea that it would maybe go up to BMG, and I don't want to be clicking and dragging to check all of that. So I can just select G8. I can do a Control Shift and down, Control Shift and right. That selects all of my data going down and across. Control C to copy all of that. And I can go back to the left-hand side of my screen. I will place my mouse cursor in cell G20. I can go to the Paste drop-down, choose Transpose. Right, and there we have it. This is what we ideally want to always get to, or from the examples or from the people I've taught, that we would rather want to have data going downwards more, because I have more rows available than columns. In Excel, we only have 16,384 columns. We have about 1 million rows, so I would rather want to make use of the rows more rather than the columns. Right? Just makes it easier to view the data rather than clicking and dragging to scroll left and right. So Transpose Paste does that very, very well. And so we want to, in the exam, they'll ask you to maybe copy and paste the data. They may not use the word transpose, right? They may use a synonym. They may use alternative words, right? Just remember, switch rows, columns, flip rows, columns. It can say change orientation of the data. You may get confused with page orientation, portrait, landscape. But remember, if they just look at the words very carefully, they could say they may refer to the data only. They may refer to a range of cells only, right? So that's something you need to watch out for. And paste transpose is very likely that that will be used in such a scenario. Right. So let's move on. Click save. And we look at some more formatting options. Right, so if I just briefly open up, I'm just going to go back to my exercise files, or my folder here. I'm just going to open up the exam objectives. What are we actually going to cover? So these exam objectives are available on the Microsoft Excel MO-200 landing page. Right, I'll just briefly share that link with all exams, and I'm sure Jared, you will know this as well. I know you're a colleague of mine. I've studied with you, I've worked with you. That your exam objectives will tell you what you need to know. Right? So if you go through the exam objectives, we will see that I must study exactly this. Right? They will ask pretty much everything. They may ask some things, but I just tell everybody, look at the objectives, see what is available, and you have to know this. Right? That's it. End of story. You don't want to be missing out on anything. And it also tells you that you don't need to study certain things like, say, pivot tables and macros. You won't find pivot tables and macros here. Right? That's in the next course. And so you don't have to worry about studying for those if it's not in the exam objectives. And so what we're going to have a look at now, we're looking at specific ways of formatting cells. So just looking at briefly at merge and unmerge your cell alignments, format painter, wrapping text, certain number formats, looking at cell formats as well, your cell styles, and clearing cell formatting. Right, so we're going to briefly look at those elements, what we should know. They are asked quite a bit. Right, so just to test your skills on how we can professionally lay out a certain worksheet, right, for purposes of distribution, for presentation, for electronic viewing, just makes it easier to view. And I'm using the all product sales worksheet in the Contoso inventory exercise file. So what we're going to just start off by looking at is this heading here. Excuse me. We can see this heading in cell C1. It looks kind of squashed. It's cutting off. I could probably increase my row height, right? But I have this unused space here, and I want to utilize the space as much as I can, right? So the heading feels important. It feels quite primary. It's overlooking your data, all right? You want to give meaning to this heading. So you want to use the cells around this particular heading, utilize all that space, merge your cells, make some of the font bigger, just to make it feel much more important than what it is currently right now. So right now, this particular cell is not merged. What does that mean? That the cells are not acting as one particular cell here. I still have multiple columns, multiple rows, individual independent cells. What I want to do is make this range from C1 to G7 one large cell. So then once I have one large cell, I can make use of all the space as I like for this heading, and I don't need to worry about it interfering with anything else. Right, so because the problem is here that if I want to, say, make this Contoso product cells fit into one cell, I can see it's overflowing into D1. If I double click in between C and D, this column header, you can see that great, the heading is fitting, but what did it do to my data below? It's got all this unnecessary spacing here now. And when I want to maybe print this, this is going to be a problem. Also, when I'm viewing it, now I have all my data shifted to the right. Right, so I really don't want that situation. So I want to rather just merge my cells. When I merge all of this into one cell, and then I want to adjust column widths over here, then this particular problem which I'm facing won't occur. So I will select C1 to G7. In my Home tab, Alignment Group, I have Merge and Center. This little screen tip telling me here, combine and center the contents of the selected cells in a new larger cell. This is a great way to create a label that spans multiple columns. Right? So as I said earlier, I want to make heading feel primary, make it more important, then use merge and center. Right, and there's actually a couple of options for merge and center. If you go to the drop down, it's important we know this. In the exam, they ask a couple of these and they'll word it very, very carefully. It will be very tricky wording. I know I've made a mistake once and I've had to undo to restart the project, to restart that particular question after I realized I did something wrong, right? So there's merge and center, and I'll go through each one what actually it does over here. So if I go to merge and center, the very standard option, it takes all those cells, merges it into one cell, centers the data horizontally and vertically. How do I know it's a vertical and horizontal form of centering? You will see in your alignment group, you have this center option available. So left align, center align, right align. You'll also see above it called middle align, top align, bottom align. So both middle or center options have been selected. So your data is exactly in a certain location with equal sided areas on the left hand side, right hand side, top and bottom. And so that was merge and center. What are the other options? We have merge across. All right, so if I choose merge across, it's only going to take the row at the top and take the particular columns E, F, and G and make them all into just one cell, convert C, D, E, F, and G into one cell, particularly only for row 1. Right, so merge across only works for the selected row where we merged everything into one cell. Compared to merge and center, takes all of these cells into consideration from C1 to G7. Right, so there is a difference between the two. Right, if I just choose merge cells, let's do on its own, it merges everything into one, so it looks very similar to merge and center. However, this does not center the data. Right, so it may specifically center the data vertically or middle align it, but it will not center it in terms of a horizontal alignment. Right, so you will see that it's no longer horizontally aligned, just aligned vertically. So there's a difference between merge and center and merge cells. Right, the one centers it horizontally and vertically. Merge cells only centers it vertically. All right, and unmerged cells, what does that do? It's the original way of where we had our data before. Everything where we have individual cells, independent cells, back to what was before. Right, so split the current cells into multiple cells. It used to exist as one cell. Now we have multiple cells. Right, so just familiarize yourself with these commands. The screen tips that show up on the right-hand side give you a really great indication what it's going to do. Right, so in the exam, just mouse over these. It will tell you what it does. The picture, the little icon shows you what also it's going to happen. And we may want to use that to our advantage. All right, in the exam, don't try, well, I suppose you can, but it just wastes a lot of time. And remember, in the exam, we also have a lot of clicks being captured, Excel seeing certain methods you are using, and we don't want to restart a question whilst we are going through trial and error, right? So we would like to do that right now when we are practicing, where you see the options of merge and center, you see the option of merge across or merge cells or unmerged cells. All right, so to familiarize yourself before the exam, make sure you get it right in the exam the first time round. If we do make a mistake, it is common. We can just, well, we won't be able to, we can undo. I don't suggest you undo, rather restart that question, all right, because your clicks are being captured. We don't want to have the wrong clicks captured and then Excel marks you down for something that it wanted you to do in a very specific way, something which is more correct, rather than a method where you're trying to figure out the trial and error, right? So just try to practice as much as you can before that, and you will then see the differences between each one of these. And these screen tips on the right-hand side give you a very great indication for that. So merge and center is used primarily for headings. It can be used for anything really. I've seen a lot in headings. It can be in other areas where we want to get more than one cell merged together and utilize all the space we have available in that specific area. We also want to look at specific settings for formatting these headings for our data. So when we want to maybe format these cells where I'm utilizing space below in a certain words, for example, I have this product key or product name or unit price total sales. It's causing some of my columns to have unequal widths, right? So maybe if I were to put the second word where I have more than one word currently available, I put the second word on a new line, it may reduce certain column widths. It may ensure that column widths look more equal, right? Or maybe if you have something really long, so it's not going to work very well with your data, right? It may look different all the way down, but it's more of like for means of trying to easily see the data, right? Just makes it more friendly to the eyes, just to change the view slightly. So what am I talking about here is the wrap text command. So the wrap text command in the alignment group, wrap extra long text into multiple lines so you can see all of it, right? So if we did have maybe this column which was really fitting to ensure that I don't have very long columns, but sometimes some of this data might not be visible. Yes, I can expand it, but what is the cost? I have all this blank space available, right? Maybe I would want to put it onto a new line, so I can use wrap text for that. But I'm just going to do that without headings, right? I'm not going to do it to all this data. We have quite a lot of data here, but without headings here, what wrap text may look like. So I'm going to select the data, select A9 to G9 in my Home tab, Alignment group, right-hand side, wrap text. Right, so wrap text, when I switch it on, didn't seem to have any effect, but the effect is there when I, let's say, try to make column B slightly smaller. Right, you can see that product key or the word key has disappeared, but if I expand my row height a bit, I will see that key is now appearing on the next line. All right, so I can have now the word appearing onto the next line. Same with maybe product name. I'm just going to, for this example, make this really small so we can see what product name looks like and what total sales actually looks like. Right, so if it were all to go onto a different line. Let me just undo that. Right, maybe you will keep product key as it is, because that's just we have three digits inside there, so I can put it onto its own line or key on its own line, and so we can reduce the amount of space we are using for that particular column. We do have other alignment options. Right, so other alignment options exist in our alignment group, bottom right-hand corner, alignment settings with this arrow pointing diagonally to the right. If I open that up, I have this dialog box opening up where I would like to adjust text in a certain direction. Right, so I have abilities to center my text horizontally or vertically, or change its position in a certain way. So just like how we were talking about earlier in the alignment group, I could center a line, left a line, right a line. I could use a top, middle, or bottom. Right, I have some more options here, or the very same options as well, where I can choose from this drop-down list. I can specify using these certain measurements here with this preview on the right hand side, where I would like to align my text in a certain direction according to certain degrees, right? So let's say I want it centered aligned, right? And I can then use my mouse, where on the right hand side here I have this this half well, the semicircle over here. It says text with a line going across this red diamond, and when I click on that red diamond, click and drag downwards. Well, if I'm going anti-clockwise, I can change my direction of the text, and it gives you a preview of what it's going to happen. I can even go the other direction, and it will show you, sorry, clockwise and anti-clockwise, my mistake. So we will see the direction of our text if we want to change it. So let's say I make it 45 degrees or so, positive 45 degrees, and I horizontally center it, vertically center it. I push OK, right? You will see that your text has been rotated slightly, right? And so how this may be very much visible is if I make my row height slightly taller, then you will see that your text has now been rotated in a certain direction. I have seen certain worksheets rotated like this, or certain types of worksheets, maybe in the academic environment, I've seen this quite a bit, but we can rotate it to give it some sort of a different look, a new style, right? And if I go back over here to alignment settings, right, so I can go click on alignment settings, bottom right hand corner. I can also right click, format cells. I can go to the alignment tab, and I get the very same settings, right? So I can change the directions from here. I can even choose to wrap text from here. I can change the text direction, left to right, right to left if I wanted to. So these settings may need to be adjusted in the exam. They may tell you very specifically to flip the text or change the text in a certain direction, this many degrees. So this is where you will go and do that. You won't find the degree setting inside your alignment group. Otherwise, you can also choose the wording that is listed over here. All right, so the degree setting won't be specific, but you may be asked to change your text in a counterclockwise or angle clockwise direction, vertical text, rotated up, rotated down, right? You can go to format cell alignment to change it to specific degrees. So if I select my data again, go to this alignment group, there's an AB with an arrow going diagonally to the right. That is text direction. Maybe I can choose angle clockwise, right? And that will change it in a certain way as well, right? So I personally haven't used this myself, right? I just believe it takes up a lot of space. Might also be difficult to read, but again, that's just an opinion. A lot of people do use this. I have seen it used quite a bit in different industries, mainly the academic industry, right? So your schools and your high schools and your universities, I've seen columns formatted in this way, right? So wrap text, merge and center, this alignment settings, extra settings for alignment, familiarize yourself, practice on the data I've provided to you. You may also want to indent your data, right? So some extra buttons here. Move your content farther away from the cell border, or you want to make it closer to the cell border. So let's say this text contosa, I'm just going to use this example here. I want to increase the indent, right? So it's just moving it away from your cell border, right? I could very easily just center the data if I wanted to. So if I just center it or right align, but your left and your increase and decrease indent is mainly used if you just want a tiny bit of space available on the left hand side for easy viewing. I've seen this used in a very specific scenario. I think let me try to replicate that over here, where if I have certain borders here, right, it might actually be very thick borders. Let me try to make this as thick as I can. Okay, it's not very visible. All right, so I'll just explain what I've seen, that the border might be so thick that it might be overlapping into the text itself. So you sometimes can't make out specific alphabet letters. And so I've seen the increase indent button used to just show a little bit of spacing where we have a thick border and people can still see the text. So I've seen that specific use case as well. I haven't seen anything else in my line of work very specifically where increase or decrease indent is used. Maybe you've used it in a certain place. That's great. It's something very much used. I've used it a lot in Word rather than your Excel environment because I have very easily available left align, center, and right align that does this for me very well. Right, but familiarize yourself with these buttons, see what it does with the text, right? It's just the formatting option. Your content doesn't change. It just changes the way it looks, right? And I think we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to talk about just other forms of formatting with your number formatting, as well as how do we clear all the types of formatting, right? So I think even format painter should work. All right, we'll see how much we can get done. So I'm just going to put this back to what it was before. And if I want to put it back to what it was before, I can see I applied a number of settings to it. Maybe I have no idea what it was before. I could push the undo button a couple of times. I could go through a series of steps in my undo drop down. But what if I just want it back to something unformatted, back to what it was before formatting? I have one big step I could take. In my home tab editing group, I have this clear drop down. I usually call it the pink eraser or the purple eraser, depending on your version. And we have this drop down called clear, which allows us to delete very certain functionality that has been implemented. So the two that we mostly use is clear all and clear formats. Right, so clear all is something you need to be very careful of. It is something that is undoable. However, it is the same thing as pushing the delete button on your keyboard. So when I push clear all, that's what happens. All of your data is gone. So A9 to G9 is deleted. Exactly the same command as if you were pushing the delete button on your keyboard. Right, but I just want to clear the formats. Right, so have the data, remove the colors, remove the direction, remove any other forms of formatting. So when I click that, you will see that content stays, but all colors, all directions, any font changes, any formatting, any form of formatting you put in there, that's one big step to take, clear formats, and that gets rid of it very quickly. Back to the data, what it was originally. Right, so that's something you may want to use more. I've seen a lot of people go undo, 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 till to the point to get back to right to the beginning. Just rather use clear formats, and you're back to what it was, where it was before. This doesn't work very well with certain types of data. So let's say you try to do that on your date column, right? So I go clear formats. You will see that your dates start appearing as numbers, right, in the serial number format. As I talk about serial number formats a bit later, but why this is also considered a date. Certain industries, certain places use dates like this. Right, so just be careful that you don't clear formats for everything. It may change the behavior quite drastically, and then you don't know how to deal with that. Right, so that was clear formatting. Let's say you wanted to change the formatting of the currency. I'm just going to use certain data here. G10, Control Shift and down. I want to change the formatting of this rand symbol, so the South African rand, I want to put it a different currency symbol. So I may want to go to my home tab, and in my number group, I have this currency drop down. I may want to choose a different format, right? I may want to choose accounting number format, right? But however, let me just give you one word of warning. If the exam tells you to change currency formatting to something else, currency and accounting do exactly the same thing. Right? So you can see that currency and accounting both look very familiar. Both have a currency symbol, both have the decimal symbol, both have 1,000 separator. However, there is a slight difference between currency and accounting. Accounting puts the currency symbol on the left, the numbers on the right. Then currency is keeping the symbol with the numbers. In the exam, you have to choose the right one, right? So in your line of work, in all the content that you use on a regular basis, currency and accounting doesn't show much in terms of the financial value of a certain cell. It just changes the formatting slightly. However, in the exam, if you go and choose accounting instead of currency, you will get that question wrong. Right? They are very specific. You have to read the question, change or format the following text to currency formatting. Don't go and pick accounting. Right? Even though they look exactly the same in terms of financial value, showing financial value, you will see that accounting looks slightly differently. Right? So be very careful. But if I want to say change the symbol, I want to instead of making it rands, I want to show it in euros. Right? I would select my data, right-click, format cells. Right? Another neat shortcut of right-click format cells is selecting the data. Control-1 on your keyboard gives you the format cells dialog box, and you go to the number tab, or you can go to the home tab, number group, bottom right-hand corner, number format. That also opens up your format cells. You can also go to the home tab, cells group, format drop-down, format cells. So many ways to go to format cells. It's a good idea that you know all the different ways to go to format cells. It will help you to speed up in the exam, also on a day-to-day basis when you're working with your files, with your work. You may find something easier to use, but what I really find quick is right-click format works very, very well. And in your number tab, currency category on the left-hand side, the symbol is something that you want to go and change, and they ask you to choose a certain currency. Can be anything, can be literally anything from this list. It is organized in a certain way, certain alphabetical way. Right, but what I found is if you use a scroll bar on the right-hand side, you can very quickly get to what you want instead of clicking all the way multiple times. It just takes too long. Scrolling sometimes also doesn't take takes a lot of time. So just clicking and dragging this block here, and I see euros appearing. So there's euros with different areas. Right, in the exam, they may tell you to choose something specific, so please choose that specific option. Don't just choose any euro symbol. They will tell you specifically which one. Right, so I'm just going to choose this euro where it has the euro symbol after the number, right, instead of before the number. And then I just push OK, and then I have the euro symbol appearing after the number. And so just be aware that you can format cells specifically with currency in a very specific with a very specific symbol. Same applies for accounting, right? You may also be asked to change the decimal places. Just be aware of that as well. So I'm going to conclude there. Just 3 minutes after 10:30 South African time. We will continue with the next part, where I'm just going to show how we apply cell styles to the data. we're going to just do some format painter as well. And then we will start with our next module of define names. We're also going to talk about spark lines and as well as conditional formatting. Right, and that's it for now. But thank you for attending. I hope you found this informative. This video will appear on my YouTube channel in the next 1 day or so. You may have seen that I did not give a registration form to maybe sign up for the course, right? I just wanted to try and make it very easy. I want to see how it changes the way in the way I market or distribute the course. I'm trying different things. Apologies if it does seem very tedious. It doesn't really make sense in the way I'm doing things. I'm just trying really different ways to get the course out, to see what works, what doesn't work, because when I start doing more and more courses in the future, I want to make sure that I can finalize on something which will work all the time, and I can use that going forward. So thank you very much for attending. If you have attended the course for the first time today, have a look at my previous YouTube videos to just get familiar with what I was doing in the previous lessons, right? And I hope to see you in the next course, which I will advertise on my social media channels. So I will get that out to you as soon as possible. Thank you, everybody.